I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a review copy of the upcoming novel Tom Clancy's The Division: Recruited. I haven't done a book review before, other than required work in my days at university, but given my obsession with the Division story, and the fact that I've covered both of the previous books in great detail, I thought why not? Written by Thomas Parrott, I admittedly was a little nervous when I first opened this up, as the previous two books had been written by Alex Irvine, and I'd grown comfortable with his style of writing, and had no idea what to expect from this new author's interpretation. However, I was pleasantly surprised. The green poison epidemic that originated in New York City has now spread far and wide. Washington, D.C. was one of the next major cities to be hit. Much like New York, it wasn't long before D.C.'s infrastructure began to collapse. Police, hospitals, emergency services were quickly overrun. The National Guard was called in, but was unable to cope with the riots and dwindling numbers through sickness. The government was falling apart, and what was left of it was evacuated from the city. The president has died, and the two who were appointed since have also been reported as dead. However, the sleeper cell agents of the Division are still active, attempting to save what remains. And despite their low numbers, they have been successful in pushing some of the larger hostile groups back and out of the city. Although the identity and knowledge of the SHD's existence was among the highest level of classified agencies, it has been months since the first wave was activated, and by this stage, most people have either witnessed or heard tales of their activity across America. Located in Maryland, Myra Kanhai is a security expert who previously served in the US Navy. When things started getting bad, she rushed over to the enlistment officers so she could do her part in helping bring the situation back under control. But when she got there, she realized it was too late. The building was dark. All she found was a man in an officer's uniform, slumped over the desk. He had clearly taken his own life, rather than succumb to the virus that was ravaging the country. It was at this point that Myra knew that all she could do was to fall back and ride out the situation at hand, to do her best to ensure that she and her younger brother could survive. They would go on to move around from building to building, district to district, in search of a safe place that they could call home. Eventually they would join a community of survivors, called Athena. In time, Myra's past in the Navy would become known, and much to her objections, she was placed in charge of Athena's security, protecting it from the scavengers and hostile groups who only wanted to take advantage of what was going on. Unfortunately, Myra's time of head of security led to making some tough decisions. Some of these decisions required action for the survival of the community, but would ultimately lead to the death of members, including her own brother. One day, while a team was returning from a supply scavenging mission, they were followed by a large, heavily armed group wearing yellow hoods. Myra's defensive preparations put up a good fight, but ultimately they were far outgunned and quickly losing ground to this invading group. Fortunately for Athena, there just happened to be a cell of Division agents who were active nearby. Through a cloud of smoke and gunfire, the agents quickly dispatched the remaining hostile forces. Inside Athena, once the smoke had settled, Myra talks with the agents and finds out that they were actually just passing through to carry out a mission of grave importance. Then, before Myra realizes what's happening, the next day she has agreed to joining these agents in their mission. She doesn't exactly know what it is and what she's signed up for, but she's now been given the chance to make a real difference. The old way of recruiting agents is long gone. The only way that new members can now be recruited is out in the field. Will Myra be successful in overcoming the tests and challenges thrown her way? Or will she be overcome by the long line of enemies who are plotting to put a stop to the country's last line of defense, the Division? Thomas Parrott has an amazing style of writing. Don't get me wrong, I thoroughly enjoyed the previous two novels written by Alex Irvine, but this was something special. Call me a classic stereotypical millennial if you'd like, but generally I'm not so driven by fictional written literature. I would usually prefer my fictional entertainment to come in the form of something interactive, or with supporting infographics, images, or even movies and cutscenes. I prefer my general reading to go into something that is more fact-based. Learning, education, knowledge. These are the things that would generally drive my reading experience. But Parrott's work on this novel absolutely hooked me in. Sure, there was a certain amount of familiarity with the setting that drove some of it, but the detail he went into when describing scenes, I could picture in my head so clearly that I struggled to put it down. I found myself hanging on to every word. Actually, it wasn't even so much the detail. I don't think that's the right way of explaining it. The style and direction of how he explained it. It just met up with how my imagination has been filling the gaps with the Division story up until now. I was so engaged that I found myself reading through certain scenes faster to match the action of what was playing out in the story, and that I was actually feeling my heart rate increase like I'd entered the Dark Zone in the Division 1 for the first time. Again, I'm not familiar with this sort of reaction through reading a book, so bear with me. A huge part of this has to be with how the characters have been portrayed. All three of the main characters are very easy to relate to. Brenda, the Division's cell leader, is charismatic and strong, but isn't without her vulnerabilities and regrets about the choices she has made in the past. Leo is a strong, silent type with a stoic, almost hostile way of expressing himself to those around him. But deep down he has a heart of gold, trying his best to hide his utmost respect and care for those in his team, while keeping the mission at the forefront of his mind. And Myra, a strong but likeable character, who like most others, has gone through absolute hell to survive this far. While she embraces the challenge ahead of her, at every turn she questions whether she is capable, either ethically, morally, or physically. The story is told from Myra's point of view, and although I thought I'd struggle after following April Kelleher for so long, I found it a very easy transition into her story. Within only a few chapters, I found myself having formed quite a relationship with each of them. The only thing about this novel that didn't quite sit well with me was the ending. It just felt a little anticlimactic. Without going into detail, it just sort of ended. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wanted a little more. However, this could be more of a testament as to how much I was enjoying the story, rather than the ending being no good. If you enjoyed the New York Collapse and Broken Dawn novels, this book is for you. If I had to rank them, I would say that New York Collapse was a bit different due to all of the puzzles that needed to be solved, so it would be better to compare it to Broken Dawn, and out of the two, I found Recruited to be far more engaging. I'm actually looking forward to reading through it again. Don't get me wrong, I like reading fiction, but I often find myself getting bored with all the fluff they use to fill the story and build the scene. I just never felt that way with this novel. Am I just getting older and more chill, ready to embrace this sort of entertainment? Or is this a book that you really need to check out? Believe it or not, I've kept the spoilers to a minimum. I've just attempted to set the scene a bit more than the general overview that we're given on most websites. The bulk of what I've talked about is from early on in the book, and there are a number of details that are purposely left out. I'm not interested in spreading any spoilers or leaks. I plan on covering the story in greater depth after it's been released in February 2022, but as always I'd recommend reading the book as it will do far greater justice to the story than I will. I'll be tackling it from a narrative point of view, rather than through the eyes of the agent in training. Now for a hint of speculation. I feel like there may even be a little bit of a teller as to why the fighting is happening in the soon-to-be-released Division Heartlands. The agents are headed in roughly the right direction for this, so some of the events they came across could be the reason. But I absolutely couldn't be sure, as there has been nothing officially released on the upcoming title. That's something to talk about more in a later video. Thank you for watching, I hope you've enjoyed my first ever book review, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!